Okay, hello. In this video, I'm going to talk about how a showbiz show tape was done. In this picture here, if you have never seen this before, as you see, Aaron is there at the keyboard, Duke's playing the guitar, and Rick's playing the guitar. I think this is Kathy in the background in the programming room. I kind of learned more from Bert Wilson when I talked to him on my vacation time when I was down there at Creative Engineering. I asked him about the record. I asked him about how show tapes were made. So that's what this video is going to be about. So it's probably going to be a long one. So here we go. If you have the Rockafire Explosion record, I'll talk about that first. You remember that this is the picture where all the characters in the studio. And obviously this is the same picture, but it shows the real cast, or some of them at the time, in the studio. This was actually not in the basement at Creative Engineering, like I thought. It was at a studio called Amelia Studios, and that is where they recorded a lot of the time. They did record at Creative Studios, but I'm not sure how much, how long, or what songs were actually recorded there. If anyone knows that, you can let me know down below. Bert kind of sounded like he wasn't quite sure what all was done there. At least he couldn't remember. But he said that they did record here a lot in the earlier years. Both the studios were used. So I don't have a picture of the Rockafire studio, as I call it, at Creative. I don't know what it looked like. I think it was somewhat similar to this one. It had a lot of wood paneling. I think maybe the carpet was orange instead. But Amelia's carpet was blue, as you can see there. It's not there anymore. I don't know what has happened to it, but I know there was a time where Aaron was taking fans down to show the studio. I would have liked to have seen it. I didn't get a chance to ask him about it at the time, and I hear that it is no more. I'm not sure what they're doing with it now or what's happened to the studio, but I guess it's not there. It's only a few blocks away from Creative Engineering. It's on Amelia Avenue. I think it was about maybe 4 blocks away from her, so it wasn't very far for them to go to and record when they wanted to. Later, as Bert told me this, they recorded in Aaron's house. A lot of the material was done there. I'm not sure when they started doing it. Again, I don't know which ones were recorded there. But they did use his house as much as they used, I think, these other studios. And I was really surprised about that. But I think it had something to do with probably the money and how much it would have cost to probably rent the studio for a certain amount of hours, because that's what you had to do. You had to rent time at a studio. And, say you know or didn't know how long you'd be there. Say you wanted to rent it for, 4 hours. Everybody had to show up, get there, and get things done, and then get out of there. So it probably cost a lot of money. So that's probably why they went back and forth and used studios when they needed to, and then they went over to Aaron's house and recorded a lot there at any time. So everybody just brought everything over, and Aaron had his own instruments and things too at his house. I know he had other pianos there. So that's kind of a little information on the studios, or there is a little confusion on who played what and where, and I didn't know there was that many. I thought everything was recorded in this studio because of the picture, but it was not. How a show tape was made, as Bert Wilson told me some of this, I asked him, how long did it take and what all was involved with this. From start to finish, and I'm talking about classic Rockafire shows, meaning no rehash or no recycled or rehashed type show tapes. I'm talking original ones, like, say, the Magic show tape or the Trivia Night or the Colander Head show tape. They had to come up with the idea, theme. They had to pick music for it. Some of it was scripted. A lot of it was ad-libbed on the spot. That's how Aaron wanted it. He wanted everyone to sound like they were real and not actually robots. That's why they didn't want anything scripted too much, because it sounds like you're just feeding a line when you have things pre-written. When you're just making it up on the spot, you sound a lot more natural and a lot more organic, and that's why they sound very believable. So if you've never kind of caught that before, you can catch it now when you listen to some of the dialogue or some of the shows. You can kind of see where it does sound like they are kind of making it up. That's why you kind of hear mistakes, sort of, but they're put in, like laughs. People, you can even hear people laughing in the background sometimes. I've noticed that, but it works, and it's great, and I think it makes it so much more believable for the sound of the characters and the feeling of them being real and realistic. So that's what I like anyways, and that's why it was done that way. But of course, they always had to try to keep themselves on track, as Bert said, so they would sometimes write, some lines and maybe some jokes, or Aaron would give them an idea, go home, think about it, come back and have a joke or have some kind of thing written. And that's where Duke comes up with some of his little stories. He would start them off with, this by Duke LaRue. That was Duke's idea to, say things like that. He'd come up with something. I think Celicia did that too. I'd say Bert and Aaron were the best at coming up with things on the spot and joking and laughing and things like that. They were really the best at it. Duke told me himself that he said he had a hard time trying to come up with things sometimes. He said, I couldn't do that. It was hard for me. That's why a lot of times he'd say, what? That's why he would do that. So, because he wasn't sure about what he wanted to say or what he should say. And Celicia didn't really either. I think, Bert said she hadn't done voiceover before. Of course, the Rockafire was her first job. So that's why she really pretty much just got her little musical numbers and didn't really always have a lot of dialogue. But sometimes they'd give her, things. So when they would finally come up with a theme and they'd come up with songs, they'd kind of try to play around with it, decide who would sing what, and kind of structure each 20-minute show. As you remember in the show tapes, a lot of times, they'd come on for 20 minutes in the beginning, and then they'd go off, come back 20 minutes later, and then do another 20 minutes. So there was about 3 segments, I think, for each show tape completely. So if you played it from start to finish, it'd really be about an hour long. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. So they probably had a certain amount of time they needed to get in. So they had to come up with enough skits, enough songs, and enough anecdotes or whatever. And I think that's where some joke came in once, where I think Aaron said once that kids were writing in and saying, we don't want so much dialogue, we want more songs. And that was actually joked in one of the show tapes. That's actually true. I remember one time, the last time I watched it, I kept thinking, they are talking a little too long. I kind of want them to get to the songs. You know how kids are. We just want to dance and jump around to the music. We didn't really understand a lot of what they were talking about. I mean, some of us older ones did, but little kids didn't understand some of the jokes or didn't understand, or couldn't even hear them because it was so loud in the background. The showbiz, with the games and the rides and the conversation, the talking, it was so loud in there. You couldn't hear the show. You couldn't hear the dialogue sometimes from the characters, so you had to be closer to the stage. So I always thought that was kind of a problem. So that's why we didn't listen to the dialogue as much. We just wanted to hear the songs, because that would drown everything else out. So that was kind of the explanation for that. But now we really love and appreciate all the words and things that they all said now. It's fun to go back and listen to the jokes and things. Sometimes you just didn't hear it back then. But each segment was like 20 minutes, so it's probably about an hour show. And, Bert said that he kind of did a lot of the arranging. He actually ran the studio a lot. When Aaron wasn't there or was gone, Bert would run it. Bert and Aaron were very much like a McCartney and Lennon team. They would write a lot of the themes, dialogue, a lot of the jokes. But Duke did too. I'm not sure how much of the others came up with things, but I know Duke came up with, the magic show tape, as I said in his bio page. It was his idea for that. And, I think all of them, and even Jeff Howell, would come up with certain songs they wanted to do and play, and they'd just find the right show tape to put them in that went with what they were kind of saying or talking about or joking about. So they all had a hand in it. But it would take, I asked him, I said, how long did it take to get it from, record and get it all finished? And he said it would take them 3 months to get a complete show tape done. That was ideas, songs, recording, programming, editing, patting them out, get them out to the stores, and take about 3 months to do all that. And that's a long time when you think about it. To them, it probably wasn't, because he said they were being pushed to rush all the time. Even Aaron has said, Showbiz wanted a new tape out every month, and he's like, we can't do that. It takes time to do this right and to get the quality out there, and we're not gonna rush it. So it would take them 3 months. I guess that was maybe, I'm gonna say, the shortest amount of time. So it kind of makes sense when you go back and you realize when new show tapes came out. They were pretty much quarterly, which means every spring, summer, fall, and winter. Maybe they'd get 1 or 2 done at a time and then send them out, but but it did seem like would only be a couple show tapes, a year that came out. And that was why. It was better to do something really good and memorable, and that's why a lot of them played over and over and over, than just get, cheapy little short ones done, and then you got 100 of them that you don't care about and aren't remembered. So I thought that was a very interesting process of, how they came up with, how they did all that. It's very interesting. It would have taken a lot longer back then, because you got to assemble everybody, get them all to come in. You got to bring their instruments with them. Sometimes they were probably left at some of the studios, or probably at Creative. They wouldn't have left them probably anywhere else, but, and come in and record, and if you had to redo something, you had to call somebody in again, come back in here, or whatever. I doubt it was probably, a lot of them were probably, I want to say, one take people, but I don't think it took them long to really get it. They probably did a lot of rehearsing. I know Bert said him and Jeff and the guys would be there really late at night, jamming all night at Creative, coming up with things and practicing. And I asked him about Celicia being a little girl, and I said, well, how are you guys around her and when she was little? And he said, oh, she'd come in the daytime. She said her dad would bring her in. Obviously, she couldn't drive yet. And bring her in, and she'd do her thing, and then she'd go home, and the guys would do their thing later that night. So, because I wondered, I thought, oh, that poor girl in there with all those guys. I couldn't only imagine what her ears heard. They were normal guys, goofing around. They were all young 20-year-olds. And he goes, oh, don't worry about that. He goes, we were good around Celicia. He goes, we'd never be bad around her, or anything. I said, well, I didn't think so. But I said, I kind of wondered how that was handled. He goes, oh, she'd always be here during the day. And I said, she wasn't here at night. And I said, I figured that. But for those of you who are concerned, I've heard stories where people thought that, poor Celicia, and, whatever on that. And no, the guys, they just adored Celicia. They all treated her like a little sister. They all got on with each other pretty much very well. I mean, in any normalcy, there's arguments or disagreements, and that's anybody, anywhere, at any time with work. But it was pretty much kind of like how the Beatles were in a studio. They were all close and performed a lot and together and had all ideas and things. I mean, they were really close. There was a lot of camaraderie in it, even with Celicia being so young, being 12, and I'm sure later when she was older, she was probably there a whole lot more. If they were doing still a lot of material yet. I'll move to this next picture, just so we have something different to look at. But, I did ask about all that, and they were all good about it. Oh, and for people who wonder if they ever had, blooper reel tapes or edited versions of the song, I've been told by Bert that there is nothing left. He said they only kept the final edited versions of any song they did, but I'm not sure, because I have found a couple fans that have had these. I don't know where they found them. I think Rick and Jeff had some outtakes that they've done, and I don't know how they recorded and kept them, but I think they have had some of them, and I actually have heard some of these outtakes and rehearsals of some of the songs. So there were some, but Bert said that there wasn't any extras. So I guess he just didn't get any, or did, I don't know. But I have heard some outtakes and stuff. And as for Rockafire merchandise, for some of them, I don't know if they've kept anything. I asked him, I was curious. I said, do you guys have any, anything at all? And Bert's like, no, I don't have anything at all anymore. He has a very few things now. I gave him something for his birthday, which was not too long ago. And he had got a few things when he was at Creative, but he did not even have the organ. I thought he'd at least have the the organ he basically played. But he doesn't have it. Duke has very little. He's gotten a few things from fans now. He did used to have a Duke mask, believe it or not. It was a mask that was going to be thrown out one day, he told me, but he said someone gave it to him at the studio, and he had it mounted on his wall like a taxidermed Duke for years. And then, unfortunately, because he lived in Louisiana, Katrina hit, and all the things that he ever had, even his old guitars, all floated away with the hurricane. And the only thing he was able to salvage was 245s, and one of them he gave to me, and the other one he kept. And he has a couple things now that fans have given him, and I've given him something. That he does have a few things now. The rest of them, I don't know if they have any memorabilia at all, because I haven't been able to ask them about any of that yet. But those are some kind of interesting tidbits, maybe some questions, maybe anything that maybe you've always wondered. Think of any other themes or any other questions you have, of any stories, maybe any else that I could tell. Let me know, and I'll see if I can make a video on it. And that's all for now, and thank you.